Hi everybody. We're about to begin genetics. Genetics is this crazy, wide-ranging discipline that you could spend an entire career on if you were a professor. Just the most minuscule portion of it. It's a pretty intimidating idea or word. I think a lot of people think of genetics and they get overwhelmed and they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much here, and there really is. However, remember, this is a survey class, and so we're just going to skip like a rock across a pond. We're just going to touch little bits of it. The reason why we're even looking at this is the College Board has told us that big idea number 3 in this class, and let me read it so I don't screw it up. It says, big idea 3 is living systems store, retrieve, transmit, and respond to information essential to life. And what this is basically saying is that there's DNA which is passed on from generation to generation, and that this is the code by which all things follow as far as how they work or what they build, all living things. So the beginning of genetics usually is mitosis. It's how DNA actually is moving and replicating itself. That's a little bit different than mitosis. We'll get into that in a second. But the point is that when one cell is made into multiple cells, what happens to the DNA? How does it get transmitted to the next level? Chapter 12 talks about mitosis, but it also talks about this thing called the cell cycle. You'll see down here in 12.3 cell cycle. You'll see mitosis here in 12.2, and then here's the bigger picture here in 12.1, which is what we're about to go over now, 12.1. So I recommend that you go there in your book and you open up to the page and you follow along with these pictures. By the end of this little podcast, I'd like you to be able to answer these 3 objectives and bring your answers to class tomorrow. Make sure that you know how cell division functions in reproduction, cell growth, and repair. Describe the structural organization of prokaryotes versus eukaryotes as far as their chromosomes are concerned. And then finally, just talk about these major events. There'll be 2 of them by which information is passed from, they'll call it a parent cell to a daughter cell. I don't know why it's not called to a son cell, but it's a daughter cell. So let's first talk about life. It's important that cells divide, or else life would not be here. Especially if you go way back to the earliest theory that we all came from an original single cell, and that cell did not have sex with other cells. That was billions of years away. That cell divided, and this really distinguishes living matter from non-living matter. If you say to yourself, "Gosh, look at that bike. Is that alive?" Well, can it replicate or reproduce? Create 2 bikes where there once was one, and maybe it can or maybe it can't. But that's a big principle that scientists look at to try and determine whether something is alive or not. Cell division is really important, and what this picture is showing you in the book is what happens to the DNA or the chromosomes, which incorporate some of that DNA in them when the division occurs. So we're going to get into this picture in a little bit more detail. This is just kind of a colorful picture of mitosis here. Well, there are some guys even around today that are unicellular organisms like bacteria or like eukaryotic organisms like amoebas that live say in freshwater lakes like Nottingham Lake, and they actually are just single celled, and they're going to divide and they're going to reproduce their whole organism. This organism here on the right should be a mirror copy in DNA as well as all other organelles and everything that's important to the organism that's here on the left. Multicellular organisms like us depend on cell division for 3 reasons. The first one is growth and development. If you think about development from a fertilized cell, what we're talking about here is when a sperm goes into an egg, what happens? And the very first thing that happens is cell division. Mitosis occurs, which is the duplication of the chromosomes, and then those split and they're going to divide, and that happens in 20 minutes. And it's pretty remarkable with how much efficiency and accuracy that does occur. And then once that that little ball of cells, let's call it 2 cells, needs to divide again into 4, and then to 8, then to 16, and so on. We'll call that growth. That's cell division. Each of those cells are going to divide. But the other part of cell division that we use today now, kind of, well, me, who's kind of stopped growing, is more important in repair. This is what I use it for a lot of times, is maybe if I get cut, then think about what happens on your skin. If you get an injury, there's going to be a lot of cells dividing in that area so as to heal that wound. That's really important. So make sure that you understand that those are the 3 major reasons why cell division are important to multicellular organisms. Now let's start talking about the DNA. You're going to hear this term a lot, called genome. Genome is all the DNA that exists in a cell of an organism. But remember, because all organisms came from an original single cell, these multicellular organisms like us, any cell in my body, an eye cell as well as a skin cell from my finger, are going to have the same genome or DNA in them, because if you go way back to that very first cell, that had the original genome in it. A genome can consist of a single DNA molecule, and it's circular in prokaryotic cells. We'll call that bacterial circular chromosome. It's just a single circle of DNA. But in us, the DNA exists in these long strips called chromosomes, and they have, in some cases for the longer chromosomes, like chromosome 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-ish, around there, there's hundreds of millions of letters or nucleotides, A's and T's and C's and G's. It's pretty impressive how much information is stored in each one of those. And here's what it looks like. That's not true. Let's look up here first. In the middle, this picture that says chromosomes, that's incorrect. That's a chromosome, and chromosomes exist in a single, if you were to put it that way, in a single line. Often, and this is a pet peeve of mine in biology, often you'll see this picture of an X. And that is true, that chromosomes can look that way, but they only look that way for a very short amount of time before they're about to divide by mitosis. Most of the time, chromosomes exist in these singular, we'll call it a lot, this purple line here, of nucleotides. Okay, so then once this chromosome is going to duplicate itself or replicate itself and become an X in preparation for mitosis, there's a little guy called a little area called a centromere. Here it is, and the centromere then will hold what we'll call the sister chromatids, which are exact copies. So here's an original guy, and now there's another guy exactly the same as him. These are sister chromatids that make up this X. The centromere holds them together. Then they're going to split. You can see that down here at the bottom of the page once mitosis begins. This chromosome over here is made up of both DNA and proteins, and we'll see how that works in just a minute. If you could, please try to circle one chromatid on the chromosome in this micrograph. And how many arms does the chromosome have? I'm going to flip it back here. Did you circle it in your mind? Did you answer the second part of the question? Here you go. Here's one sister chromatid, and we already talked about this, how only the chromosomes look like this X in preparation for division. Most of the time it doesn't look like this X. They call it, the verb is condensing, the DNA is condensed down. Here's two sister chromatids. They're each duplicates of one another. One of them was the original. Here's a centromere. We talked about that a minute ago. It's the narrow waist of the duplicated chromosome. It's where they're attached. And here's I think objective number 3. What are the big picture processes of eukaryotic cell division? And here's the answer. Mitosis, and then that's the division of the nucleus with the DNA or the chromosomes in there. And then there's a second portion called cytokinesis, where there's the division of everything else, the mitochondria, all the cytoplasm with its proteins and these microfilaments, these highways which things live on. There's a lot there. So don't forget about that in the division of eukaryotic cell.